I'm joined here today with Damien Kurek, the elected candidate for the Conservative Party for Battle River-Crowfoot. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Shelby. It is great to be with you.
Why do you think the electors supported you in this election?
You know, it's certainly been an honor over the last couple of years to represent the people of Battle River-Crowfoot. And as I traveled around over the last 5 or 6 weeks, I simply made the case, standing on my record and continuing talking about the things that I've talked a lot about over the last couple of years. Things like the need for good governance, accountability in our capital, responsive democratic institutions, making sure that Parliament actually works for the people, and then also ensuring that there's a strong rural voice from rural Alberta in our capital at a time when there are specific concerns that affect rural a lot. We need to make sure those voices are there. And over the last couple of years, I've worked hard to make sure that's the case. And it certainly has been an honor to have received a strong mandate again to go forward and keep being that voice.
And what's your reaction from seeing how many votes you receive compared to the other parties?
Yeah, it's encouraging, to have that kind of mandate, to be able to go up and stand in the House of Commons, to be able to go to committee, to be able to speak to colleagues, officials, whatever the case is, and to say, look, at the people from Battle River-Crowfoot have spoken, and they've spoken clearly. And it gives the ability to make sure that this region has that strong representation, especially at a time when there are unique challenges that rural faces, whether it be agriculture, whether it be the energy industry. We're in the midst of seeing the consequences of a drought that has impacted the prairies and disproportionately rural parts of the prairies. And certainly to be able to speak confidently about those things is very important, and something that I've been able to do, and with a renewed mandate will certainly continue to do that going forward.
Now, with being re-elected, what are your plans going forward?
Yeah, I think there's always a little bit of time between election and Parliament resuming. But I think, Shelby, something that's really tragic is that Canadians were thrust into an unnecessary election called by a prime minister that broke his word. He lied. He called this election anyways. And over the last 5 or so weeks, Canadians, I think, demanded leadership, yet there was a vacuum of that. Instead of the government being able to respond to things like I mentioned, the drought, the fourth wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, some of the real challenges that we're seeing in relationship to Canada's foreign policy, there has been a leadership vacuum over the last five or so weeks. And what's really tragic is that yesterday was not supposed to be election day. It was supposed to be the resumption of Parliament, when MPs from across the country would have been going back to Ottawa to fight for their constituents. Yet, here we are. There was an election yesterday. A virtually identical result from 2019 will be returning, with a few small changes, a few ridings flipped here and there, but a virtually identical result. And at a time when Canadians needed leadership, the Liberals failed, and those failures are certainly something that needs to be taken account of, especially as there's a number of weeks between now and the resumption of Parliament, probably a couple of weeks before the Liberals swear in a new cabinet. There's files that needed leadership. Unfortunately, Canadians didn't get it.
And from seeing the results of it being a Liberal minority government, why do you think Aaron O'Toole lost to Justin Trudeau?
I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that we had an election that nobody really wanted. Having that almost identical result, you look at the vote totals, you look at the seat count, it's almost the exact same position. And having spent $610 million, that's taxpayers' money, on this election at a time when, as I mentioned before, Justin Trudeau promised that he wouldn't do exactly what he ended up doing. And that's the untold time that they spent prior to the actual call of the election, where they were likely, instead of governing the country, instead of leading Canadians through a time of crisis, they were focused on their own electoral gains. And I think Canadians spoke very, very clearly that it was not the right time for an election, with a virtually identical result coming coming after the last 36 or so days. I think it speaks to Canadians want their parliament to represent them, want us to be able to get to work. And that's certainly what, my role as a member of the opposition, very, very much unchanged from 37 days ago. And as soon as I have the chance to get back to Ottawa, we'll continue to do everything I can to hold the government to account, to make sure that there is the government responds to the needs of the Canadians that I represent here in East Central Alberta.
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Damien.
Thank you very much, Shelby. Really appreciate it.